Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche podcast, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 rated sportsbook app out there. Get on over to your app store and download today and get some good bets on. We'll have some bets of the week for you in just a little bit. But first, of course, I'm Nathan Rudolph, joined by AJ Haefele. And on today's show, obviously over the weekend, NHL teams finalized their rosters, which we will get into the Avs with a bit of an unfortunate surprise to their roster lineup, which in some ways is good. Obviously, for one player in particular, it's a disappointing situation. We'll also talk about a little bit of John Chayka. He is no longer an NHL GM, and get into some of our dream acquisitions a little bit later in the show. But first of all, AJ, how you doing? How is everybody doing on the Avs in the bubble?
I'm good. The bubble seemed fine today. The boys were excited. I think that was something that all of Makar, Johnson, and Landeskog said 4 or 5 different times each, was they were excited. They were ready to go. They were excited. Well, I mean, they
are on the same page at least. Yeah.
They are in the money here, right?
Yep.
Like, they get to go and experience all of this, but they don't have to really take this like super seriously for another week or two.
The first proper game isn't until the second, and then the Avs' first 3 games are essentially just warm-up games that are
right. Like there's like no like they will be playing a warm-up game and then a whole bunch of these teams, and the team that they're playing against in the exhibition game, their season is on the line days later.
Right.
Becomes on the line.
We talked about this a little bit too, in the expectation that, yes, this is Colorado versus Minnesota, but Minnesota needs to prepare for do or die hockey after this. So I'm not personally expecting much rivalry stuff to happen. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, I don't think that there's going to be any of this gooning it up and guys trying to hurt each other, and I don't think there's going to be any shenaniganery here. Minnesota's got business to take care of, and then Colorado should be playing like Colorado's exhibition lineup should be like Tynan and O'Connor and Dries and Byram,
all the
and
edge
Timmins.
guys that it's like, yeah,
get them into a game and then let them do their thing.
Yep, I agree with that. Especially, I mean, look, that's the one thing Bednar preached all of the training camp was, look, we're going to need all of these guys to play for us. And if you're not going to play them in exhibition games and in the round robin, how can you play them when it counts?
Yeah. Not that getting them into an exhibition game all of a sudden unlocks a door and makes it like, oh, they're going to be great if they have to play in the postseason. Like, it's not going to change who they are. But
if you can't trust them there, like,
yeah, just let them enjoy it. So I'm of the opinion you just get through the exhibition game.
Yep.
You don't need to you just don't need to take it super seriously. You've got 3 round robin games to pretend to care about, which, like, the seeding is important. It's not irrelevant. It's just your number one thing is just getting through these games healthy.
Yeah. Is there seeding? I mean, yeah, you don't want to be 4. Because that means you face the best team coming out of the play-in round. But if you're not 4, does it really matter? 1, 2, or 3, you're going to have to go through the same teams in the future rounds anyway. So, well, I mean either way,
it's whatever. Like, it's fine. Because we don't know what the seeds lead to. Like, we don't know who wins the
right.
series. Like when you're talking about caring about seeding in the regular season, you have an idea of what that seed means. You know, oh, you don't want to finish second because then you're taking on third place in your division. And in the Central, that means that the third place team you're taking on is better than the wild card team. And so you don't want to mess with that. And that's not necessarily true in the Pacific Division, where had you finished second in the Pacific, you might have you get third in the Pacific instead of taking on the fourth best Central team, which like you don't. I would rather take the third team in the Pacific than the fourth best team in the Central. I don't want to mess with that.
Even then, with the potential implications of reseeding, like who even knows?
Right. I'm just saying, in like a normal year, that's what you care about when it comes to seeding. You're looking at how it all works, and you don't care about it. You're saying, oh, this is the seed or that's the seed, without knowing who wins any of these series. Being 1 through 4 has no discernible benefit until after the qualifying round is already over.
Yep.
Like, you don't want the Oilers. You know you don't want the Oilers, and so you know you don't want fourth. After that, it's just sort of like,
Yeah.
The Avs basically win one game out of their round robin games. They're pretty much going to be guaranteed that they are not the 4th seed.
Yep.
Should be that easy. So, win one of those games. You take them seriously enough, obviously, that you win them. You don't play Hutchinson the whole time.
But, if you're playing a couple different dudes on your fourth line.
Right. If you're rotating a one defenseman in or something else like that, or if you're playing 12 forwards and 7D or, just to get a guy in or whatever, like, come on, who cares?
Yeah. Agreed.
That's fine. They should be doing that. You should be using the round robin to get somebody in there, especially because they've got 13 clear-cut forwards that they would like to play.
Mm-hmm. And the reality is, as we get to the actual topic here, Vlad Kamenev not making the trip with the Avs to Edmonton.
The worst luck imaginable.
I have to imagine he was going to go.
I would imagine so. I didn't personally, man. I didn't think he had a bad camp. I know Evan saw him on the one day and said I didn't like his game. I was there all the other days, and I didn't think there was a problem. He didn't stand out. Wasn't like he was starring, but he had some. There were some moments. And if it's really just that he wasn't 100%, it makes total sense not to bring him. But if it was seriously just about him playing, about his camp performance, it's a little much for me because TJ Tynan had a garbage camp, and
he still wins.
Not to come down on TJ Tynan. Like I don't want it to be like I'm dogging the guy, but he didn't do anything in that camp. He didn't do anything in his time with the Avs either, because I saw some of that. Oh, Kamenev just got outplayed by these other guys. No, he didn't. Kamenev had 38 games played this year with the Avs, scored 8 points.
Significantly better production than just about any of the call-ups, I think, except for
and you look at Dries, O'Connor, Tynan, and Bowers. Those 4 guys combined for 37 games played and 3 points. Two of the two goals came from O'Connor.
Yep.
1 assist from Tynan. That's it. That was all the production. Tynan had 1 assist in 16 games.
And it was not a great assist.
And like it just wasn't the thing that people liked about Tynan is that he looked fast, because he was just fast enough to lose every foot race by half a step.
But be close and in the battle, yeah.
Like he was, and I told Evan that he was the king of just barely losing every race, every battle, because it looked close and you start to think, oh, that was 50-50. Oh, that was 50-50.
When it's really never a 50-50.
When it's really 10-90.
Yeah.
And when he actually did something on the forecheck that was good, you were like,
hello.
Yeah, it was shocking because it just didn't happen very often. Like, Tynan works hard. He skates well. He moves well. He's creative offensively. All those. He's a really good AHL player. He's not an AHL player.
He's pretty much the definition of a tweener.
He's just not. And with Kamenev, it's just Kamenev, I'm all for believing that it was the appendectomy and that he just wasn't 100%. And that he just he wasn't quite 100%. I know his rights got traded in the KHL a month or so ago. So there's the idea that,
I mean, it can't. Him not making the trip cannot help his odds of getting an NHL job. That's for sure.
It can't. If he already has an agreement to go and take a KHL job, great. But I'm of the opinion. I'm of the opinion that Kamenev will get a job somewhere. He'll get a North America job if he wants it, and then, but we've seen him in the AHL. He's a very good AHL player.
Yeah,
and maybe somebody wants to give him an opportunity. You know, maybe somebody wants to give him more than that.
I believe there is an NHL player in Vlad Kamenev.
I do too.
I don't know if he can make it work in a fourth line energy type role, though.
Yeah, we've seen him play with skill before, and it's been encouraging.
Yep.
And when he's engaged and he's having a good game, he is quality.
Yep.
It's just that the engagement, the day to day, and it's not great. Like, it's not always there every single day. And with Bednar, that's a thing. We saw it with Grigorenko. We saw it with we've seen it over the years with these guys who just don't have it every single day.
Definitely does not go over well in Bednar's Avalanche.
We've also seen Bednar cast aside a couple of guys who have gone on to have success elsewhere. A guy like Rocco Grimaldi.
Yep.
You know, cast that dude aside. And it's weird that, like, and I do wonder if you know, with the way that Grimaldi has succeeded in Nashville, if maybe moving him off or moving on from Grimaldi, he sees a guy like Tynan and is like, oh, well, I want to give that guy a
don't want to make the same mistake twice.
Exactly.
Sure.
Maybe that's a learning process for him, is that Tynan is, hey, let's see if we can get
the same type of player out of this.
Yeah, the one that we gave up on already with Grimaldi. And it's just, you know, Rocco was better.
Rocco had more offensive ability at the NHL level.
Yeah, but he was very tiny. He was a legitimate 5'6".
He was very, very small,
and defensively, defensively is not good.
Yeah,
not even in the AHL was he a good defensive winger. He tried hard, like the effort was there.
When you're that small, it just doesn't matter at a certain point. Yeah.
You've got to be exceptional at a few things.
Sam Girard is like the limit for how small you can be and still be a high-end defensive player. Really.
Right. And like a guy like St. Louis, Gaudreau, like those guys are just existing. They're hanging on. They're just trying to get by, but they had such high-end offensive talent that it didn't matter.
Made up for it, right?
Yeah, where you were just like, whatever. But a guy like that has to, you know, a guy like a Grimaldi or Tynan has to live through that. And, you know, I'm not buying that it was performance-based. I know that Kamenev isn't the coach's favorite, but if it's not about the appendectomy, then it wouldn't have made none of this would have made sense to me. I was against it. I didn't like it. Even in knowing that the coaching staff doesn't love Kamenev, it's so, to do this would be extreme because you are still trying to win a Stanley Cup here. And I'm sorry, but in no world do I believe that Dries and Tynan are better options in the NHL lineup to try and win a cup than Vlad Kamenev. I just don't
believe so. I don't believe they're better options than Martin Kaut either. But obviously, the conversation with Kaut is different.
Yeah, I don't need to get into that one for the 4,000th time.
Yeah, I mean, anyway, the reality is there. If the Avs have to play that 18th forward or whoever you want to call it regularly, they're in trouble.
17th now. They took 11 defensemen.
Yeah, that's true. Then I forgot they took the extra defenseman. So the the Kamenev situation is what it is. The other cuts were Adam Werner as expected for the goaltending side, and then Jacob McDonald was I guess you can call it the defenseman cut, even though he played a bunch of forward
hybrid.
as well. Yeah, right. So yeah, the Avs final roster included all of the younger guys that were at camp, besides Adam Werner, who honestly isn't even that young.
He's not what you think of in terms of like prospect age. Where you look at like Byram's 19, right. Timmons is 21. Like those guys are young.
Yep, Werner's 23. Did he turn 24 yet? I think he's 23.
The birthdays are all messed up now that we're talking about.
Nobody knows what age they are.
Yeah, I have no idea how old anybody is anymore.
Either way, he's a little bit older because he's a goalie, and he was from Europe, so he hung out there till he was 22.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, that's the Avs final lineup. Any expectations for guys that you think will get into actual proper playoff games besides Tyson Jost is pretty much a given, I would say, but
I would have it be Jost and O'Connor as my first two forwards.
All right.
Those would be the guys off the bench. And then me personally, I would YOLO the dice with Shane Bowers because
after that, yeah, same. So would I, but
just because the other guys are such known quantities and not in the good way. But I'm kind of over it. But the coaching staff won't agree. Of course, their jobs are actually on the line. They have consequences to these decisions, and I don't.
You play a zero experience Shane Bowers, and he's a -3 that night, and your job is in trouble, bud.
Well, and then and you've lost a playoff game.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you're like, well, can't do that again.
All right. Well, we can take our first period break there. As I promised, some picks of the week from DraftKings Sportsbook. We got hockey ones. We finally have proper prop bets coming out from DraftKings Sportsbook with hockey right around the corner. Mine, Nathan MacKinnon, the favorite to win the Conn Smythe at plus 1,400. So if you're a believer in the Avs going all the way to the Cup, this is another bet that you can make some big cashola on over at DraftKings Sportsbook. Plus 1,400, and I believe the next closest Av is Rantanen at plus 2,700. So he's far and away the Avs favorite to take the Conn Smythe.
That surprises me.
I don't remember who was 1,500. Someone was 1,500. I'm not going to look it up. It wasn't McDavid. McDavid was way down there because I think Edmonton's just not expected to make the Cup final.
What would be your top three for the Avs?
For the Avs?
For Conn Smythe.
McKinnon, Rantanen, Grubauer.
Okay.
Rantanen and Grubauer are pretty interchangeable there, I would say.
I have them flipped.
Yeah. Just because if a goalie goes off, they just win the series and win the Conn Smythe, and that's how it works.
Right. Somebody looks at the series numbers and it's like, oh, he's they won the series and they went, he went 4-2 with a 935 save percentage. And a 1.89 goals against average, and you're like,
that's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad for the Cup Finals. It elevates above everything else because he had a great Cup Finals, and you're like, oh, well, there you go.
But moving away from the Conn Smythe and sticking to the play-in round, AJ, your pick of the week here.
Yeah, Connor McDavid to lead all of the qualifying round in scoring.
Plus 1,000.
Yeah, going up against that Chicago defense. Even with Crawford in net, I'm just the
defense is so porous, man.
And that defense is bad. And I like the idea of McDavid exploiting that. The only real pause that I have on this is that I think the Oilers are going to win in 3. And there will be a series that goes 5 games. That just gives the guys in that series more opportunity to score more points. But I think McDavid could easily just drop an 8th spot on Chicago, and it's over.
Yeah, Draisaitl is plus 1,150 as well. If you like that side of those two.
No, I think the Draisaitl thing's over. I think
his hotness is done.
Yeah, the shooting 22% for the last 2 years is over with, and it's time for Connor to reclaim his throne.
Draisaitl, old and busted. McDavid, new
Yep.
hotness. Got it.
Yep.
All right.
Tired and wired, baby.
Well, if you want to bet on that or any number of other prop bets, including whether you think teams will shut each other out, scores of specific games, scores of entire series, you name it, you can bet on it over at DraftKings Sportsbook. Download their app today and use code DNVR when you sign up. And for a limited time, all users can get a special odds boost. Bet $20 to win $100 on a team of your choosing. That's 5-1 odds on any team of your choosing as a special odds boost when you use that code DNVR to sign up. Must be 21 or older, Colorado only. Other teams and conditions and eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700. And if gambling is not your thing, you can always play some digital golf for absolutely free with WGT Golf. We now have DNVR 3, our third clubhouse, opened up. So head on over to DNVRgolf.com to download and search for DNVR 3 to join that club. Put myself in the top 5 last weekend of the tournament. I was pushing. Nearly had that top spot, but I made one mistake. Pushed me out down to 5th place, unfortunately, but we coming for it. There we go. First place with a 132. Was that you, Sean? Have they found you? Have you been hooked up as the winner of all of that? Either way, if you want to participate in the WGT golf tournaments that we have every single weekend, you can jump on it, get in our clubhouse, and play true-to-life courses, whether it be Pebble Beach, St. Andrews, Bandon Dunes, many others as well, in many different formats, stroke play, match play. Last week's tournament was closest to the hole, so you name it, dnvrgolf.com again to download. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings. The Avs, honestly, the Kamenev situation was a little bit weird, but there wasn't a whole lot of turmoil when it came to them getting to the bubble with their team. Now, the story that has taken over the NHL quite a bit, which thankfully I'll take that over what's going on with the MLB these days, because that is a nightmare. But
predictable nightmare.
Yeah.
The MLB had no backup plan in place in case something happened, and they were like, "Oh, players are testing positive. It's fine. Just go play."
That's just insane to me. But
Enjoy
no
that
COVID
lawsuit.
test positive here. However, the Arizona Coyotes and John Chayka have seen their differences far enough, as Chayka not only not coming to the bubble with the team, but no longer part of the organization at this point. And this brings up an interesting conversation. Sure, I mean, we can talk about Arizona's struggles if you want, but more importantly to me, I think, is what does John Chayka do next? Because it does not seem like he's on his way out of the NHL as a whole.
Well, would you take him in Colorado?
That is the question. I mean, what is he doing in Colorado, right? Because Sakic's still going to be the proper GM, no matter what. But if he wants to come in and be part of that front office and give the Avs another voice that maybe is providing a little bit of a different look, I've always looked at Chayka as an asset manager more than a hockey team builder. Over the years, he's always consistently tried to get value out of things like trading back picks, which is something the Avs like to do, out of trying to squeeze those little extra bits to get value wherever possible. And especially when it comes to smaller trades, we've seen Sakic struggle to do that.
We have, but overall, what did he do to make them better?
Right. Ultimately, Arizona has been spinning their tires for pretty much his entire tenure.
Yeah. I mean, there were a couple of moves that I think were really, really good and paid off. Getting Alex Goligoski for a 5th round pick, that's nice. Like that's good. It's good, solid value. Wasn't great. Like it's not like changing anything, but they needed help on defense, and hey, that's a good start, right? The deals, the Chicago deals, both of them. I especially like the Hjalmarsson deal for Connor Murphy, and whoever else was in that deal. Very blah. And they get Hjalmarsson, who again, like their defense gets better, right? They just got better on defense, and that's great. Like they drafted Chikrin. I believe they even traded up. That was the Datsuk deal.
Yeah, I think so.
Also got Jason Demers out of Florida before all the injury stuff started for him. Darcy Kemper pried out of LA, got Antti Ranta out of New York. Like just kept taking chances on some of these guys. And the goaltenders for sure paid off. The Galchenyuk Domi thing didn't work out so well. But the point is I like that he wasn't afraid to move on from younger guys when there were issues. I like that he was active in moving on from picks. I like that he would trade down, he would trade up. There were guys that he liked. He was aggressive when he wanted to be. All of that said, there was a lot of movement, and they didn't get significantly better.
And you're correct. I don't have any argument about them. They haven't made the playoffs, really. They've struggled to get themselves outside of, I guess that doesn't even count as the Calgary zone, below the Calgary zone.
Yeah, how mediocre do you have to be to get Taylor Hall, Phil Kessel, Carl Soderberg in one offseason, and you're still on the outside looking in? And you've wasted 2 years of elite goaltending.
I think that's my point, is you look at the good moves he's made and you say, maybe you give this guy a position in the front office, but at the end of the day, he's just another voice in there. Sakic's still the GM. And you want this guy trying to make those good moves for you, but you maybe say, all right, to build the hockey team, Sakic gets final say. As Meek says about his drafting record, it's not great.
Yeah. You don't let him on the draft floor.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we can agree. The biggest thing, you don't let him on the draft floor and choose players and be where the buck stops when it comes to draft day stuff. That's fine. Not gonna that wouldn't have been the case anyway, but just to reinforce, don't freaking do that. That's just bad. He hasn't done well in that area at all, and some of them you could see coming from a mile away. Obviously it's still really early, but that Barrett Hayton pick, the second it
happened,
was very iffy.
It was a reach when it was made, and today it's not looking any better. Yeah,
it's gotten, and like Hayton, it's not his fault. Right. It's not like if Hayton had gone 15th.
He'd be looking like a solid prospect.
We all kind of expected him to go in that area somewhere. We would be looking at him a little bit differently, but taken in the top 5 ahead of some of the guys that he was, and it's just like there was a reason. Yeah. This was one of those areas where it looks like the community, the scout community, the consensus had this one right. And that was a huge blown pick. That was a huge one. And that's just, if you were to bring him in, he wouldn't be allowed to touch that part of the organization. It's not that the Avs have been unimpeachable there. It's just that side of things he was bad at, so don't do that.
Keep him away from it. And
where I would say he could be a more prominent voice would be in understanding, hey, let's get an asset for this guy.
Yep. 100%.
Instead of just letting him leave. Let's get this guy involved in something and move on from him. This is a younger guy that we don't have space for anymore, and there's an opportunity for us.
likely to run up against in the next couple of years.
Right, because if you look at it, like he traded away 2 first-round picks in Brandon Perlini and Dylan Strome for Nick Schmaltz. It was like disappointing guys for disappointing guys.
Yep.
And change of scenery cats at a high level, right? Like,
yep.
This was not Graves for Beagroth. These were like
NHL caliber players.
Yeah. And like Dylan Strome was the 3rd pick of the draft of all drafts of the last decade.
Just a bad pick. Even with his resurgence in Chicago, it's still a bad pick.
But. Oh, it's a nightmare. And Nick Schmaltz has been a very nice fit for Arizona and has turned out well. Like that went well for them. And that's, with Colorado now facing that possibility where they're saying, hey, should we consider moving on from Tyson Jost, Nikita Zadorov? Like,
that's where the guy with
experience,
value,
right? That's an area where he would be he could provide some value, and he could be a louder voice than they may currently have in that. But really, you look at Colorado's front office, and the only reason you would do that is if Chris McFarland got a job somewhere.
Yep,
and
mentioning that in the chat.
Yeah, when he interviewed for the New Jersey job, he interviewed for the Minnesota job last year. How many times have we talked about this in the last year on this podcast? That and even before, and when it was Jesse and Adrian with me, we talked about it being a thing that there was going to come a point in time where the Avs were faced with, hey, either give this guy a promotion to full-blown general manager,
or somebody else will,
and elevate Sakic to just,
president
of hockey ops
or whatever,
president or whatever, right? And give McFarland the GM title, or he's going to go somewhere that's going to want him to rebuild their program. Because you look at the big turnaround in Colorado's front office, it happened in 2015, happened at the same time as McFarland's arrival.
Yep.
And
do you have to go through that process again? Right, is the question.
It's right. And so if McFarland were to move on, then you would be looking at a guy like Chayka and say, oh, hey, there's actually a hole in our organization here.
Yep.
Disagree with how he's gone about his business. Craig Billington certainly doesn't seem to be going anywhere.
Seems that way.
Especially with the AHL team on the up and up the last 2 years.
Yep.
I would say it would be a surprise if Biller went anywhere at this point. So that would be the only potential opening for that, would be McFarland moving on, which he hasn't so far, but we still have an entire offseason to go.
Well,
I don't know what kind of GM openings there are going to be there,
right.
But
I mean, the reality of that question is we don't know until we get there.
Yeah.
But also, you see an offseason like the Avs had this past year, and don't be surprised if teams come knocking after something like that.
Of course. And we're going to start hearing a whole lot about the Colorado model.
Yep. As Edmonton is supposedly following now.
We're going to, because when Colorado was in its rebuilding phase, we talked a ton about Chicago. The team to follow. Why wouldn't you want to follow the team that won 3 cups in 6 years? And how did they do it? Oh, they had a superstar wing, they had a superstar center, and they had a superstar defense.
The problem is that model doesn't just happen.
Right. And you even look at how Chicago got there.
Yep.
They had the first overall pick. I think Taves was 3rd?
2nd or 3rd, I forget. Yeah.
Yeah, he was at the top of that draft.
Yep.
And so a couple of top picks, and then Brent Seabrook, middle of the first. And then, and it's funny if you go back and you watch when Brent Seabrook got drafted, Chicago didn't want to take him. They were trying to trade down, and they couldn't find a taker, and so they just took Seabrook, and it was like,
turned out okay for him.
Yeah, right. Worked great. And then Duncan Keith, a Hall of Fame talent that they got in the 2nd round.
Yep.
And then they just, Antti Niemi won a cup for them. They were the reason why people were like, oh, maybe goaltender isn't as important anymore.
And then turns out it was, but
right. Well, and then Niemi went to San Jose, and it was like, oh, maybe he wasn't very good. And point being, like, Chicago like built their team, like their core, right? And in a way that every organization has to. You have to get a little lucky along the way. You know, the Avs obviously got that break. They got their one first overall pick. The one draft lottery they won was 2013.
And it was a slam dunk first overall pick for them.
And even had they not gotten McKinnon first, they would have second overall. They would have been in the money with Barkov anyway. So
been a huge win. The eternal conversation of what if they went with Seth Jones instead, who has developed into a star defender now.
Who's a Norris caliber defenseman. So you're like, they were fine winning in that draft class, right? Very different directions if they get those guys, because very different personalities, et cetera, whatever. But
you look at the luck along the way, though. They get Cale Makar 4th overall after losing the lottery.
The Duchesne trade, you remember when it happened?
Yep.
Ottawa was seen as a playoff favorite, and they were loading up for the run. That's why they went and got Duchesne in the first place.
Not meant to be where it ended up. Yeah.
I remember talking on the podcast being like, oh, well, when it's 22nd overall or whatever, like, great. That'll be one more prospect to add to the coffers.
Yep.
And then it ended up being
a top
4th overall. It ended up being the 4th overall pick, which was a disappointment because they had finished last in the NHL. Like, there have been so many like ups and downs, and Kamenev was part of this, with maybe the unluckiest of all of them, with 2 lost seasons just as the Avs needed anybody to play for them.
Yep.
And then he comes back and, oh great, now they're good. And
there's no room for him, really. Yeah.
A pandemic starts and he has to have an appendectomy.
Dude's just like, never lucky. Never lucky. Yep.
Just cursed, man. So like this whole Colorado model thing, you know, obviously a team's going to be interested in McFarland. I would say that they should be interested in the analytics department that the Avs have built.
For sure.
It's not to say that they're the only reason, but Colorado's front office certainly looks like they found a good way to blend the scouting and the numbers together, because that's their process.
I mean,
they check. Hey, their scouts like this guy. They put them through the analytics department. They run the numbers on the analytics, and they say, yeah, you know what? That's a guy that makes sense for us.
You don't get the 2019 off luck, but you certainly don't get it without the groundwork behind it either.
For sure. Like, for you to go through an offseason and you to make as many moves as they did. It's one thing if you make 2 moves and they work out.
Right.
When you make 5 moves and all of them pan out for you, you've gotten lucky.
Yep.
You did good work, but you got lucky along the way, because you've done lots of good work in the past and things, for whatever reason, haven't panned out.
Yep.
You have no idea if a barely speaking English Val Nichushkin is going to turn it around or not. If he's going to find confidence, if the coaching staff is going to click, whatever, right? And then it works out perfect. He's better than you could have expected. Recreates the best aspects of his game while adding offense to it, which was what was missing, and it just worked out great
in every way. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, and the ideal scenario for Burakovsky also happened. You know, Belmar comes in and has a career year, and it's just like every little thing went perfectly for the Avs this year. Outside of all of the crazy injuries. Like, they had a super injury-filled year, and it didn't matter. It just didn't matter. That's how you know you did a really good job building a roster. So if you want to follow the Colorado model, it's basically have a couple of stars, get good players, and surround them, and don't spend a ton of money.
Yep. I think that's the big key, is being able to do it with cap space.
And obviously, because the Avs have been as young as they've been, it made that easier. But now it's, you know.
So is Chris McFarland our Strava Craft coffee performer of the day then?
Yeah, let's give it to Chris.
All right. he can take it on down, as it is time to acknowledge the CBD-infused Strava Craft coffee, which has really changed lives. The CBD is non-psychoactive and has been known to help aches and pains, as well as migraines, anxiety, and many other things as well. So you can give it a try today at multiple places in and around Denver before you buy. And when you do decide to buy, head to StravaCraftCoffee.com and get 20% off when you use code DNVR20. And of course, my favorite read of all time. Just used the trimmer the other day to shave up. AJ did as well, I believe. The Manscaped Lawnmower 3.0. It's a fantastic trimmer, even has the little LED light on it, so if you're trying to get in the cracks and crevices, you can see where you're going and what you're getting. Set up to be a no-nick blade with ceramic blades, of course, and Manscaped, of course, has a ton of other options for you as well, whether it be cologne or if you're looking for shaving materials like shave mats or shaving cream, anything along those lines. They have you covered. Even can buy the Perfect Package 3.0, which will take care of everything you need when it comes to keeping yourself fresh below the belt. So head on over to manscaped.com and use code DNVR20 to get 20% off and free shipping when you order. Your balls will thank you. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings. Almost said Davidson's Beer, Wine, and Spirits, another loved sponsor, but DraftKings is our presenter right now. So as things get all set up here, I'm very excited to get into the proper NHL, but I had to get my one last fantasy chat in, as we asked today on the DNVR Avalanche Twitter account, who the dream acquisition is for the Colorado Avalanche right now. AJ, I know you're going to say Taylor Hall, so let's have the Taylor Hall conversation, and then we can get into what other people said, because I requested they not say Taylor Hall.
It's Taylor Hall.
Yeah, right. Is that easy enough? Said and done.
I mean, on it. all of the things that people bring up as detractor for them not being in favor of it, I just don't buy. He's hurt all the time. He hasn't really been that hurt lately. Like, if you look at the first 5 years of his career, definitely it was a common theme. Last 5 years of his career, no,
not that many. Yeah. No more than a McKinnon, certainly.
Not good enough. Garbage. One of the best play drivers from the wing in the NHL. Guy's awesome. Not worth the money. Maybe fair. I mean, we don't know.
Depends on what he asks for. Yeah,
they wouldn't at this point. Obviously, they wouldn't be trading for him. It would just be signing him in free agency in a depressed market with a cap that's not going to be going up for a few years. So, maybe he doesn't want to take a 6-year deal. Maybe he wants to take a 2 or 3 year deal for still like $8 million, right? Like, it would still have to be pretty penny.
I mean, that's the big question for everybody hitting free agency this year, is people just don't know how the market's going to shake out.
Yeah. We have no idea what teams are going to be able to spend. The cap money, the cap space is just not there right now.
Yep.
So, he didn't really have that big of a drop off this year, and he played for 2 really bad offensive teams. So, I'm of the opinion you drop Taylor Hall next to a good center, which he hasn't had in a long time, and I'm all for it.
Magic will happen, yeah.
Like, look how good that guy has been with the centers that he's had in his career. And look, then none of them are Nathan McKinnon. None of them are even Nazem Kadri. Like, come on. Yep. So for me, it's just too easy. And
best
the whole
his career is probably Nuge
or Heischer. Like,
or yeah, they're pretty similar, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the whole he loses everywhere he goes. That's really you're gonna blame that on one guy. The same way removing Duchesne was the magical elixir that allowed an entire franchise to suddenly change overnight.
I'm
not buying that.
Like, you have to remember, the only reason that New Jersey team made the playoffs that year anyway is because Taylor Hall had a freaking MVP season.
Right. Like we talk about how they stole it from him, how he stole it from him, but it's like, do you remember the year that he had? And like, he's not a center, so for him to have had that year it was stupid.
It was like a 30-game point streak or something insane. Yeah.
He drove that team to the postseason. And then because it hasn't been that way. I don't know. I'm not buying it. I'm
just never got better. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so strange to me that in
blaming any single person for Edmonton's disaster is just not fair for sure.
Well, and then he goes to New Jersey and like he has the big MVP year, and then he did get hurt. Like he had the one serious injury that he's had in the last several years, and even before then, he was a point per game player. He goes to Arizona this year. He's a point per game player, just below, and it's like just put him on a team that isn't a bunch of dudes who can't score more than 50 points. Yeah, that has legit talent. And it's like, and we see even in here, we've got this, when he left New Jersey. You know what New Jersey also got the second half of the year? Goaltending. Is that Taylor Hall's fault too? Like, I'm of the opinion that Taylor Hall's he's extremely good and would be a very good fit, as long as they did something reasonable in terms of length of contract. I don't care about cap crunch. Something Avs fans need to learn. They're going to be in a cap crunch.
It's going to happen.
Pretty much starting next offseason for however long this cup window lasts, the Avs are going to be navigating the cap from here on out. And there's not going to be them sitting around with $9 million of space anymore.
And the reality is, whether you want Taylor Hall or some of the other players we'll get into here, you make that move and you deal with the cap consequences when you get there.
Right. You already have the defenseman in place. Everybody will use the Toronto as an example. But teams have been Boston's been dancing around the cap for years.
Chicago's done it this whole second half of this decade.
And they missed the playoffs a whole bunch, so not the greatest example.
But they got 3 cups. As they arrived to dancing around it and picking up players like Panarin and arguably getting a 3rd cup because of their cap management. And then they hit the downswing, like every team ever in history does. Eventually, it bottoms out. So you have to make your push for the cup when you have the chance.
Right, and it's just being so afraid of the cap, like it's one of the teams on the ice. You just can't live that way. You have to be cognizant of it. You have to understand it's got its issues. Like you have to know what to do in order to dance around it and to manage that world. But you can't be afraid of it. Like, would you rather, if you're going to spend $8 million, would you rather spend $8 million on 3 guys who are going to be in your bottom 6, or would you rather do it on Taylor Hall? If you already have a good bottom 6, that's a pretty easy answer.
Yep.
So
especially when you have pieces like Martin Count on ELC coming.
Well, and you have Martin Kaut on an ELC, you have Shane Bowers on an ELC, you have Alex Newhook probably on an ELC starting next season.
Yep.
Well, I guess the season after.
The 22 season.
Yeah, thank you. The 21,
22, yes.
Yeah. 1 year from now, he should be on an ELC.
Yes.
Because that's 2 championships away. But it's like this is irrelevant. Possibly not re-signing Makar and comparing it to Panarin's situation. And Panarin was a free agent. Makar
is an RFA.
He is an RFA where he will have 4 years of RFA control. This is not a conversation.
Even if it was a conversation, Makar is the type of player that if it comes down to Cale Makar or Taylor Hall, you probably go with Cale Makar. Like, JT Compher shipped that contract. Jonas
not even probably, dude.
That contract, right?
It's not even probably. You just straight up do it. You take Makar, obviously. That's not the position that they're in, though.
Right. But this is what I'm talking about, though. Even if they were in that position, when you get there, you find a way to make it work by creating cap space, by dumping players, and doing what you have to do.
And that's where Chicago got in trouble, because they dumped players like Teravainen to get rid of Boland's contract, stuff like that, where they were constantly using assets, first round picks, and
that's where they ran
players
out of eventually.
And then they used that to open up cap space because they overpaid for a couple of guys. Like they reset and broke the market when they gave Taves and Kane those contracts.
Yep.
There was nothing in the market that said that needed to happen. And then, especially the matching ones, where Taves
has not lived up to the contract. Even.
A good way to put it. I was going to say disaster, and that would have been a little unfair. But yeah, Kale, all RFAs are guys like that. It's how the system works. It's 7 and 27.
Yep.
You're either an RFA for 7 years, or you get to when you turn 27. That's when you're eligible for unrestricted free agency.
It happens to line up the same for Kale.
So whichever happens first. So
yeah, the Avs have control over Kale.
There's no concern. He will sign a contract that will take him probably to unrestricted free agency, maybe right up to it.
I would guess as much for a lot of money, but
the whole Makar situation, because of the cap, could be interesting. They may want to do a 1 or 2 year deal instead, and then even when that's over, he'll be an RFA, so it will not matter. They will have all of the leverage in the world to get a long-term deal. Cale Makar's not going anywhere.
Pay him now or pay him later is the only decision there.
It's really and we're talking about a dream acquisition. I'm taking Hall over Pietrangelo because I'm buying that the defense is already there. Right. Especially when you have Byram and Timmins. That I just spent the last 2 weeks in person watching Connor Timmins roll everybody else. That. I'm sorry, but that dude's an NHL player. The only reason that we're gonna see this Mark Barberio, Kevin Connaughton nonsense is because those guys have NHL experience. But otherwise, Connor Timmins is an NHL player who's ready to play today. He's ready to go. Byram's still a little bit longer. I would say could still use some development. But when he gets the puck and he's playing with confidence, electric.
You love to hear it.
The only guy on the Avs who is better with the puck is Makar on the defense.
You're segueing us into some of our other ones, as you mentioned, Pietrangelo there.
Yeah.
A couple of other guys' thoughts. You seem to have converted more than a few people saying John Gibson.
Would be okay with John Gibson. If we're talking like a dream acquisition, I've always been a really big Vasilevsky fan, so I'm fine with that. I love Vasi.
True. One of the most popular ones on the tweet, and I fully agree with this one here. Gritty.
Oh, a great answer. Seriously, a great answer.
Hard to get much better than Gritty for the dream acquisition. I don't know, Gritty or Howler. Who do you go with?
Oh, Gritty. Gritty has proven himself. I mean, all Howler did was get himself fired.
True enough. True enough. Who else we got on here? Some weird ones. Can you make a case for someone like Anze Kopitar?
No, he's just too old.
Okay,
and that's my problem with Pietrangelo. He's already 30.
Well, with Pietrangelo, age might be an issue. With Kopitar, where does he go? You have McKinnon, you have Kadri, you have Newhook coming. Yeah. How does he fit in the team? I just don't see it. I mean, Kadri would have to go the other way. Here we go. Here's a man after AJ's heart, truly.
Svechnikov?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. I'm sorry, but there is an alternate universe where Ottawa gets that second pick,
Yep.
And they don't draft Russians, so they don't take Svechnikov. They just give the pick to Colorado and say, screw it. And he's an Av.
And the Avs end up with Svech.
Yep.
Boy, what a world that would be in the stories of what ifs. But
telling you, man, there's that alternate universe that I try not to think about.
Just makes you sad.
Yeah.
Okay.
How much I love Svech.
A handful of other answers over here. The one I think I saw was really popular was unite Cole Harbor and for 1 year at the end of Crosby's career, bring him to Colorado.
That's fine.
Ovi, a couple of other, mostly just like legends and stuff. Some Anthony Mantha in there.
As a dream acquisition?
Yeah,
like,
right?
Anthony, like,
all right, so like we get some people who like give us the whole rundown of like, here's my totally unrealistic guy, and I like maybe this will actually happen guy.
My maybe this will actually happen guy that is that nobody is talking about is Brandon Saad.
Interesting. I don't have, he's 28, 29?
Somewhere in there. Yeah.
I think age, yeah.
I think he's got a year left on his $6 million deal, but is the kind of two-way forward that would fit perfectly into their top six and could give Chicago a little bit more of that cap relief if they need it.
Has 1 year left on that deal and is only 27. Currently.
Yeah, 1 year left, and probably will not get $6 million on his next deal.
Yeah, because especially his time having returned to Chicago, the production has just not been there.
He went from a 50-point player to like a 35-ish point player, but still gave him the really good two-way play.
Yep.
And again, this is where I'm just buying coming to Colorado and playing with more skilled players will help.
I mean, his production went down, but still 18 goals, 23 goals, 21 goals. He puts the puck in the net.
Yeah. And putting him, like, if you wanted a very talented but two-way oriented second line, it's where he replaces Nichushkin.
Yep.
Landeskog, Kadri, and Sad would be.
He's just doesn't have the size, but essentially the same role as Nichushkin and a very strong defensive forward that can put some goals in for you.
Well, and
McDavid, you're not even dreaming about that. That's a fantasy beyond I can even go. Like,
yeah, I don't even know. The only thing with McDavid is that it costs you McKinnon. Otherwise, it doesn't happen.
That's the dream you have where you like once it happens, you're like, oh, I must be dreaming.
Yeah, where you like recognize it, you like look around and you're like, damn it.
So, yeah, just a couple of takes there. We'll have to wait and see until the offseason, of course, to actually figure it all out. But as we wind down the show today, the Avs do play their first exhibition in 2 days. Obviously, for us here in Denver, watching it could be difficult, but it will be available at the DNVR bar. I do not believe we're doing a watch party for the exhibition, so
I don't think so. Also, if you're in the lounge, if you're a member of the DNVR lounge, we will have like a hangout that day. Yeah. We will have something set up.
Digital hangout.
Yeah, we can all hang out on Discord, watch the game, and talk, and just chill.
So if you're not in the lounge or you're not subscribed to DNVR, be sure to do that while you can before hockey is back in earnest so you can hang out with us and watch it. And then, the DNVR bar will have the game even if there's no watch party. So if you're desperate for a way to watch it, you can always roll down there and do it that way as well. The plan is to have watch parties for the proper playoffs. Again, we'll see what happens with the world and what's going on, how things go. But either way, whether it's at home or at the bar, we will be watching hockey well inside of 1 week's time. So I'm looking forward to it. AJ, I hope you're as excited as the Avs said they were today.
Yeah, definitely. Also, yes, we will be playing NHL 20 on Thursday evening. Yep. We're not totally sure of the time yet, but the two of us, Andrew Kreisman, will be playing NHL 20. And people that want to hop in and on the PlayStation 4, for the record,
PS4,
people that people that want to hop in with us, they are welcome to.
Do not be afraid. If you're terrible, you'll fit right in. If you're great, you can carry us.
Exactly.
Either way, it should be a fun time playing some 6s or 4v4 or whatever we do. Something, again, we want to do that every single week.
Yep.
So hope we get to see you guys out on the ice with us, even if it is the PS4 ice. But we're out of here for the day before I extend this podcast any longer as we hit the hour mark. Thank you, as always, for listening. And until next time, we'll talk to you tomorrow.